Hello and welcome to the F1Stop show, episode 7. I'm your host, Samuel One, and with me online, virtually, is Wes Spinman. Wes, how are you this evening?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, thanks. It's been a busy week. We've had pretty much non-stop cricket the last few days, so a bit tired, but yeah, other than that, pretty good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Work's been good. And yeah, it's been great. Good weekend of F1 in Saudi Arabia, despite its political
Yeah, controversies,
how do you say it?
shows.
Political, yeah, issues. That's it. Despite its political issues, we still got a race. Still had a race going, and let's jump into it, shall we? So the race, Max Verstappen won it, which is great for Red Bull, but it was his teammate Sebastian Sergio Perez.
He wasn't even
Excuse me.
racing. Going back a few years there,
Excuse
met up with
me.
Red Bull.
Sergio Perez. Yeah, it was Sergio Perez who got pole and started on pole. History maker, first Mexican ever to get pole position in F1, but he didn't win the race. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great lap from Checo to get it on par. As you said, the first Mexican to be on pole in Formula One history. I mean, F1 been around for 72nd year? No, older than that now. Over 70 years, 76. Yeah, I think it was the 75th anniversary last year or in 2020. I can't remember now. But yeah, in a way it's a historic moment, isn't it? The first Mexican to be on. I'm not sure how many Mexican drivers there have been, but I think there have been more than you think actually. So
I mean,
yeah, for
yeah,
Perez to get his first pole is as I say quite a historic moment, and he, to be fair, he got off to a pretty good start in the race. I think held the lead
he did.
for a number of laps, and yeah, gave Max a bit of a run for his money. I know it's early on in the season, but yeah, I think he did really well up front, and then obviously we had a Ferrari come into play sort of around, what was it, lap 16, I think it was.
Lap 16, yeah.
When they got on the radio to Charles Leclerc saying pit to overtake, essentially trying and undercut Red Bull, try and get on the quicker tire or change tires first, so they're slightly quicker on earlier on in the race, and they obviously said that the radio is obviously broadcast to essentially the whole world, really, the whole paddock. So Red Bull would have been listening into that message, thinking, right, we've got to box Perez at the same time as Leclerc, so we don't lose anything, we don't get undercut by Ferrari, and then you just see Charles Leclerc just sail past the pit lane and carry on, and then Red Bull thinking, bollocks, we've been outplayed. I think that was a
Yeah,
masterstroke for Ferrari.
it was. It was. I think they played Ferrari. I think they played their cards very well. You know, I think they meant what they did. Box to overtake, and I think Leclerc, you know, this was an opportunity to try and trick Perez, and it worked, and he led the race, which well, for Perez is kind of, oh, I fell for it. If I just stayed out, it would have been a different situation. And yeah. So what do you think of it?
I think it was as I said, a sort of a masterstroke from Ferrari. I think we see teams try and sort of put other teams off, or try and sort of outthink other teams by sort of sending their mechanics into the pit lane maybe a lap or two early, just to try and tempt other teams into pitting before, and sort of trying to just play with their strategy a little bit, because obviously teams will be wanting to stick to the plans that they've got, and yeah, they have like plan B, plan C, backup strategies. But yeah, I think it was a brilliant sort of bluff by Ferrari, and in a way it was made even better by the fact that Latifi crashed only a lap or two later, so then Ferrari could essentially have a free pit stop under, was it virtual safety car, full safety car, something or other. So I think Perez dropped down to fourth after that. So yeah, if it wasn't for the safety car, I think Ferrari, they still played it really well, but having the safety car there, it completely messed up Perez's race, and you got to feel sorry for him in a way. But yeah, complete,
Yeah.
as I say, masterstroke by Ferrari.
And if Ferrari keep this up, they could have a very good season, both from a driver's perspective and a constructor's as well. Because I know it's still early days, but Ferrari have got one win. Red Bull now have one win with Max Verstappen. It could be anyone's game. So
Yeah, I mean, sorry, just
talking
on
about
that,
the race,
Ferrari have got, as you say, one win, but both drivers have been on the podium in both races as well. Whereas for Red Bull, it's only been Verstappen on the podium for both races. Yeah, Verstappen's got a win, but yeah, I think Ferrari have got about double the points of Mercedes already. I think yeah, it's only two races, but I think Mercedes are second in the constructors, obviously because of Red Bull's non-finish in Bahrain. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. And yeah, as you say, if Ferrari keep this up, then they could be in for a good season, both in drivers and constructors championships.
now we all know that a battle with your teammate is all fun and games, but ultimately you're there to race, you're there to get points for your team. And when you're battling with your teammate, lap after lap, and you're not focusing on the real goal, it could kind of prove a problem. And this is where we had the Alpine drivers, Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso, just there was a little tug of war there, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was a little bit. It just seems that Esteban Ocon in a pink car, he always seems to get into scraps with a team. I remember him and Perez actually at Spa a few years ago when they were both racing for a Racing Point, and I think it was actually the first race of Racing Point after Force India went into administration. And I
Yeah,
remember them going sort of down the hill into Eau Rouge, and they banged wheels. I think one of them hit the wall, and I think one of them might have had to retire that race. And yeah, Racing Point got over the radio and basically said, or said after the race that they wouldn't be allowed to race each other. So whether something like that happens with Alpine, I don't know. I think the racing between Ocon and Alonso was actually pretty hard, but fair as well, which is the main thing. Obviously, you don't want your teammates to drive into each other, but I think it was
yeah,
hard, fair racing, and I think at one point it did remind me a little bit of Canada 2011, that famous almost like 4 hour long race when I think it was red flag for like 2 hours and Button came from last to first, crashed into Lewis Hamilton on the pit straight in Canada. It's just that's I think Alonso sort of tried to not purposely put Ocon into the wall, but it sort of had that similar sort of vibes, and I was just worrying a bit for Ocon or whoever was behind him. Is he going to crash him into the wall? But yeah, luckily for Alpine, it worked out well, and I think Alonso. Actually, I think Ocon finished ahead of Alonso in the race, but I think they both got points anyway. So yeah, all worked out in the end, I suppose, for Alpine. But yeah, I don't know if they'll be wanting to see that again and again this season, especially
yeah,
Alonso, who's been in F1 for a long time. So yeah, whether he wants to battle with Ocon like that, I mean, it is hard, but you don't want your teammates scrapping too closely, do you?
yeah, indeed. Another another big news of the weekend was Mercedes, but in particular Lewis Hamilton starts in starting the race 16th towards the back of the grid. And it all started in Q1 where he didn't make Q2. He was at risk, and everyone watching qualifying was shocked, surprised. Never saw this happening. And a seven-time champion starting 16th on the grid, that was like, wow, what's going on? This is a real eye-opener. But he finished 10th. And 10th place, of course, is 1 point, but it's better than no points.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Mercedes at this point will. I mean, every team will take every point that they get, I suppose. And yeah, Mercedes are second in the constructors, but for a bit of luck in a way, because as I said, Red Bull non-finish in Bahrain. But yeah, it's just a case of what has happened to Mercedes. They've been eight times constructors champions, 8 times in a row, and all of a sudden, new regulations they just don't seem to have cut it. Maybe they've cut the side pods a bit too much. Who knows? But yeah, for whatever
Hmm.
reason, their car just isn't as good as I said, we've seen for the last 2 years. I mean, Russell got P5 in the end, which I suppose in a way is a pretty good result for them considering their pace this early on in the season. But yeah, for Hamilton, as you said, 7-time world champions, the statistical goat of Formula One, for him to
Yeah.
qualify 16th and be knocked out by Lance Stroll in an Aston Martin is, yeah, pretty disappointing, I think, if you're a Mercedes fan. But having said that, as we've said, he is a 7-time world champion. He knows how to handle situations like this. He might not have been too experienced with it before, being in pretty much the fastest car over the vast majority of his F1 career. But he's sort of testing his mettle a little bit, but he's got more than enough experience to be able to deal with these setbacks that he and Mercedes are experiencing at the moment. So, yeah, I expect him to bounce back in Australia. I think he's won there quite a few times. I can't remember exactly how many off the top of my head, but yeah, a bit disappointed from Hamilton. But as you say, a point is a point. I think he said afterwards that he was on the radio just like, does this position even get points? It was
Yeah.
just like,
He's not.
well,
Yeah,
it
because
doesn't get
he's
points.
not used to
It gets a
finishing
point.
10th.
It doesn't get
He's not
points. It
used
gets
to
a point.
finishing
Yeah.
10th in a race.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, as we've said, Mercedes will take every point they can get. Yeah, every team will take every point they get as well.
I'm just waiting. I don't know how long it will be, but I'm just waiting for the race or for the races that we see that Mercedes pace, that we see those consistent 1-2s that we hopefully could be getting, even if George Russell doesn't get a top two, just a podium. And we just want to see the Mercedes where they're supposed to be, on the top step, on the podium,
And the thing,
winning races. And
imagine a season
sorry,
where Russell's best finish is lower than what he got with a Williams, which is P2 in Spa. I mean, yeah, Spa was
wow.
ridiculous circumstances, but just imagine that if George Russell doesn't get higher than P3 this year, that would be quite something. I'm sure he will. I'm sure Mercedes
Yeah,
will figure out the car sooner rather than later, but yeah, that would be quite something.
it will be because I don't. I mean, I still have memories of Belgium reigning that Belgian reigning race.
Well, if
Excuse
you can
me.
call it a race anyway.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And well, Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc are clearly the stars of the show, and it's a battle that I'm ready to watch. Um, I still think it may take Hamilton maybe 1, 2 more races to get back into the groove, but Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, I'm all for it. And it was the Dutchman that came out with the win. What do you make of their battle so far? I know it's only 2 races, but it's been exciting.
It's been incredibly exciting. Yeah, I mean, we saw great battles between Verstappen and Hamilton last year, and we're getting exactly the same this year. And as you say, already 2 races in, they're going wheel to wheel in both races. Yeah, it's just great for Formula One. It's great for us fans because we get to see two of the best drivers in the world, two of the best races in the world, just go head to head, wheel to wheel. Fingers crossed every weekend. Obviously, it won't be every weekend, but if we get races like we've seen in Bahrain and battles like we've seen in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, then yeah, this season is going to be as good, if not better, than last year. Maybe. I mean, whether it will come down equal on points going into Abu Dhabi again, I very much doubt it. But yeah, from what we've seen so far, the drivers' championship could go to, or probably will go to one of those two, Verstappen or Leclerc. It's just a case of who's got the skill, the talent, the faster car over the course of the next 20 races now, 21 races. Some new tracks on the calendar as well. Tracks coming back, so yeah, it'd be interesting to see how their battle pans out.
One thing that I've taken from these last 2 races that I thoroughly enjoyed is the race to race battle between Leclerc and Verstappen, like lap after lap. Those little battles to get in front of each other. We saw that in Bahrain when they were switching places, I think 4 times over the course of 2 or 3 laps, and they did it again in Saudi Arabia. The DRS tactical battle as well, which it was quite intriguing because you don't know who was going to get the up on the other person, and it was just amazing to see. Great to see.
Yeah, I think it was the last corner. I can't remember which lap now, but I think they both locked up because they're probably both trying to figure out where each other is. They're both going to try and outbrake each other, and I think again one of them sort of held back slightly and then got the DRS on the straight and just zoomed past. I think into turn 1, turn 2, whatever, the first chicane essentially. I think Leclerc was behind and then locked up, went deep into the second part of the chicane and simply just ran over it. I mean, that's just the pressure that these drivers are under, and yeah, as you say, it's great racing, and yeah, the more we see of it, the better, because it's absolutely brilliant entertainment.
And it's also exciting. What I want now is to have literally a race of a straight from like one start finish line to another. Have Verstappen in his Red Bull and Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari, and just go who can go the fastest on the straight. And I would pay good money to see that.
Almost like a drag race, if you
like. Yeah, exactly. Almost like a drag race, like
Baku.
Because it's so nice.
Let's do it in Baku, longest straight, or China, the longest back straight.
Yeah, that would be really exciting to see. So, like, okay, I'll pose a question to everyone. Who do you think would win in a drag race? Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari or Max Verstappen in his Red Bull? Who do you think would win in the drag race? Because after seeing that, I don't know. I think maybe Max Verstappen, just because of his racing nature and he's so aggressive. But yeah,
that's got me. Why don't they do that in testing? Like, just at the start of the season, right? Drag race 2v2. Let's go down the grid and then just do a drag race and see who's got the fastest car. I mean, it would help people with their predictions and sort of expectations a little bit, I suppose.
It would.
Although having said that, I mean, we've seen over the last year or so. I mean, in some speed traps that they have at the track, I think some Alfa Romeos have gone fastest. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Alfa Romeo don't have the fastest car, but yeah, that would be interesting to see what these cars max out at, and yeah, it's just who has the fastest car in a straight. Yeah, let's go testing Formula One next year.
That would be great. That would be great.
You listening, Liberty Media, Stefano Domenicali? There you go. New idea.
Yeah. Right. Lando Norris and his McLaren finished P6, meaning the British team got their first points of the season, and I know all those Orange fans will be very pleased with that. Norris finishing P6. It's a great result, and you want to kick off your season in great style, and finishing 14th and 15th in Bahrain wasn't great for McLaren, and P6 for Norris. It's great. I'm not quite sure where Ricciardo finished though.
I think Ricciardo retired around about lap 37. I want to say. I think it was 3 cars within the space of a lap and a bit.
Oh,
I think there was Ricciardo, Bottas, and Alonso. Yeah, we had that whole sort of pit lane entry saga where I think Hamilton wanted to come into the pits for new tyres, because they had been going for like pretty much the whole length of the race at that point, like 37, 38 laps on one set of tyres. And I've heard different things saying, oh, the pit lane was open, Mercedes told him to box, but Hamilton just drove straight past. I think you've seen the video on F1 where the team tell him to box after he's already gone past the pit lane. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see which version of that story is true. I'm not 100% sure yet, but yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, really, for Hamilton at that point. But with Ricciardo's car essentially just straight in front of the pit lane entry, he couldn't really do much. I don't think. I think it was safer to just carry on and not pose a risk to Daniel Ricciardo, also B, not to get a penalty for Hamilton and Mercedes, because I think he's had issues. I think it was Monza last year or the year before when the pit lane entry was closed and he pitted anyway, got 5 second, 10-second penalty. Can't quite remember now. Yeah, it's just trying to avoid that situation again. And in a way, I suppose it kind of worked out for him. He did get a point at the end of the day, but whether that had a bigger impact on his race, whether he could have got into, say, the top 8, top 7, what have you, I don't know. It's one of those sort of what ifs, I suppose. But anyway, going back to the actual point of like Lando Norris, yeah, hugely pleased as a McLaren fan to get their first points of the year. I think he actually finished P7, just missed out to Esteban Ocon. I got that wrong in the notes. It was similar to sort of last year when Bottas pipped Ocon literally on the line. It was sort of a reverse of that this time. I think you said last week Ocon wanted revenge. Well, he didn't get it against Bottas, but he got it against Norris.
Yeah.
He beat Norris in pretty similar fashion to how he lost out to Bottas last year. But yeah, 7th place is still 6 points for McLaren. It's them off the mark in 2022. And yeah, I think they're still struggling a little bit from what we've seen by their qualifying pace. They qualified, what was it, 11th and 12th actually. So next to each other. But yeah, from what we've seen from McLaren the last few years, especially the last 2 in particular, when they've been sort of top of the midfield battling with Ferrari, and yeah, it just seems that all that hard work has just been undone a bit, which is a bit disappointing for myself and other McLaren fans. But yeah, to get some points on the board, great stuff for McLaren.
Indeed. And right, just before we finish off, we've got one more thing to talk about, which probably my favorite part to talk about. Now, whenever we have an F1 season, whoever's in charge of, whoever's in charge of the F1 calendar, putting out all the races of where we're going to race, where we're going, what countries, they must have a really tough job. But there are just some races that, shouldn't be on it. There are some that should be on it that aren't on it. And there are some where you can't take it out regardless. And it brings me to say that earlier this morning, in the early hours of, I don't know, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock UK time.
Hours, yeah. I think it was about 3 a.m.
I was sleeping. I was sleeping at that time. F1 announced that the sport is going to Sin City, aka Las Vegas. That's right. F1's going to Vegas, baby, in November 2023. Now, love it, hate it, I don't know, but that's it. That's the news. F1 is going to Las Vegas.
Yeah, I know you're pretty hyped about it. I mean, we've got the Miami Grand Prix in 2 or 3 weeks' time, maybe 4 weeks. I can't quite remember where it's slots into the calendar now. But yeah, we've got 2 US Grand Prix on the calendar this year. As I say, Miami and obviously Cocha as well. And I think this Las Vegas is from next year, 2023. And I mean, having had a look at the track, it doesn't look very inspiring. There's a lot of sort of fairly easy corners. I don't think there are too many sort of heavy braking zones. There are a couple, or 2 or 3, but it looks a very simple sort of track. I mean, but having said that, so is Austria. Then also having said that, Austria last year was quite the snooze fest. I think there wasn't many good moments from the last couple of Austrian Grand Prix. But yeah, we'll have to give it a go. I think some people have said on social media that it looks a bit like the Tokyo track in Gran Turismo games, which I can sort of see. I haven't played Gran Turismo a bit myself, but yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of new street circuits, especially when you've got the likes of Hockenheim, Nürburgring, Kyalami in South Africa, Sepang, Malaysia. other tracks like that, maybe even Fuji in Japan, for example, when you got purpose-built circuits, Magny-Cours in France, another one, when you got tracks like those with great history to them, why not go and race there? I get it's largely down to money, and obviously tracks have to pay some sort of fee to race on the F1 calendar, but
I did not know that.
I'm not a.
Didn't know that.
I don't know for certain, but I assume they'd have to pay some sort of like entry fee, if you like. To, I mean, I know like teams have to pay a certain amount. I think we've got the Michael Andretti's interested in putting in a bid for a new F1 team, and I think that's like a £2 million entry fee or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, as I say, I'm not a massive fan of street circuits. Some are okay. Singapore, I do quite like as a street circuit. I mean, Baku has been reasonably entertaining the last few years. Just trying to think of other street circuits now that aren't Monaco. Montreal, Canada, is another track I quite like. Albert Park this year with the new changes. I think we've got enough street circuits on the calendar at the moment.
Yeah.
Fordery does street circuits really well, but I'm not 100% sure if it's something that F1 should be fully focused on, really. I kind of get the idea behind having another US GP. I mean, F1 has struggled to get a foothold in the US, but I think over recent years, I think last year's US Grand Prix at COTA was the most attended US Grand Prix in history. Again, not 100% sure on that, but do we need 3 races in the States? I get it's
almost too much, isn't it? Or what do you?
I think so. I mean, I get the country itself is bigger than Europe, but at the same time, it's still one country. But yeah, we'll have to see how it goes. I'd rather race there than Saudi Arabia, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, we'll just have to see how it goes. I know, as I say, you're quite hyped about this.
I mean, well, I don't know. I was quite hyped, not because of the racing per se, but just because of, right, listen, I'm not a gambling person, but when I heard it was, I'm not a gambling person, so you won't see me in the casinos playing blackjack, picking up chips for poker. No, you won't see me do that. But just seeing, like, what Las Vegas is known for, casinos and large hotels and the I think it's called the Caesar Hall. I think it's called.
See, there's Caesar's Palace, and funny you should say that, because
Palace, that's it.
I think in the 70s or 80s they actually hosted a Grand Prix in Caesar's Palace sort of car park, if you like. And from what I read of that, it wasn't great entertainment. It was all flat. There's no sort of like camber, if you like, on the corner. There's no sort of elevation change. It's just flat, go around the same corners over and over. Well, I suppose that's what racing is, but the track was, the sectors were essentially the same if you look at the track map, and it wasn't very exciting. But yeah, hopefully this new Las Vegas Grand Prix from next year will be more exciting than that, and more exciting than Monaco as well. Just get that in there.
Yeah,
a little dig at Monaco.
So just before we finish, I just wanted to ask the question. I saw something on social media, I think maybe a couple of weeks ago, because it was quite recent. WTF1, I think, WTF1, they put out a tweet about the F1 calendar in general, seeing what races we were going to. And then they tweeted out, what races would you like to bring back or rotate? What races would you want to get rid of? And what races would you want to stay on the calendar? I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it just got me thinking. Yeah, it just got me thinking on like the races that we have and the ones that I want to get rid of and rotate with, and it was quite interesting. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've pretty much got, I don't know if they've got every Grand Prix on the calendar this year. I think they've got China on there, which obviously isn't on it this year, but yeah, there's a lot going through it. There's actually quite a few that I wanted to get rid of, which I don't think would work out quite well in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I think there are a few on there that I would definitely like to keep. Silverstone, for example, Spa, Monza, probably Zandvoort, to be honest, and Zandvoort wasn't that great last year, but tracks like that with sort of great history to them and usually provide pretty good racing. I'd like to see a German Grand Prix on there. I'd like to see a French Grand Prix on there, whether it's
I'd love to see that come back.
I'd like to see a
We haven't
French Grand
raced
Prix.
it. I don't think they've raced in Hockenheim since 2013, 2014.
It's more recent than that, 2019, I think.
Oh, 2019, wow.
It was 2019, yeah. Then they raced at the Nürburgring in 2020, because I think the pit lane is slightly longer or something, so social distancing was easier, something like that. But yeah, we haven't had a German Grand Prix. Well, I say since then, it's only been a year and a bit, but yeah, the German Grand Prix has been a bit of a weird one over the last few years. I think Hockenheim has been almost a mainstay. I think it was supposed to alternate with the Nürburgring, but some sort of sponsorship contract thing fell out with the Nürburgring, so essentially had a German Grand Prix in like the even number of years in 2014, then didn't have it in 15, had it in 16, didn't have it in 17, and yeah, it's been Hockenheim since then. But I would like to see the German Grand Prix return. I'd like to see quite a few of the current tracks on the calendar go, like in Saudi Arabia first and foremost, China, Bahrain, potentially Abu Dhabi as well for sure. I mean, usually they're pretty boring
Just get rid
races
of
in Abu Dhabi.
all the Middle Eastern tracks then.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, political reasons, human rights reasons, and two, the racing hasn't been that great. I mean, I suppose notable exceptions being this year's racing in both Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, and I suppose last year's Bahrain Grand Prix to some extent as well. But for the vast majority, there aren't many memorable moments from Grand Prix in those countries. But yeah, when you consider you've got, as I say, Montreal in Canada, you've got the US Grand Prix, so loads of other historical tracks, Sepang, another one we last raced there in 2016, 2017. It's just a case of funding for these tracks, I suppose, that have fallen off the calendar. And yeah, money, what was it Hamilton said a few years ago? Cash is king. I think he
Cash
said.
is king, that's it, yeah. It all comes down to money. So yeah, I'd agree with you on that one. I'd get rid of the Middle Eastern races, China as well. I'd bring back Sepang in Malaysia, but I would actually rotate it with Imola, like alternate it in seasons. So one season you have Imola, the next you'll have Sepang in Malaysia. I just think it just gives it some more variety, and then you've got the regulars that stay on the calendar. Montreal, I think, is a good one. Silverstone, Monza, Spa in Belgium. I think it'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you got to race at sort of historical country. I mean, you got to have a British Grand Prix. Ideally, at Silverstone. It's not the birthplace of F1, but the UK as a whole is sort of the birth of F1 and motorsports. And yeah, Austria as well, Hungary to some extent as well. Just tracks like that that A, provide good racing, and B, have some sort of meaning to them, if you like. They're not just street circuits that are built because of money or something like that. Yeah, going through it, I have been quite critical of the calendar, and going through the WTF1 article, I was quite critical. So maybe I need to sort of rein myself in a little bit. But yeah, I think there are some that can be rotated. Imola, like you mentioned, I think is a track that can be rotated, because we've essentially got two Italian Grand Prix on the calendar. So have one year, one the other, something like that. I mean,
yeah,
with another track somewhere else in the world. But yeah, I just need to rein myself in a bit when it comes to getting rid of tracks. If it was down to me, we'd have like a 5-race calendar.
Well, you've got say 2 weeks, all right, because we haven't got another race weekend until April 10th when we go to the other side of the world, being Australia, and that'll be great for the first time in what, 2-3 years, is it?
A couple of years, yeah, 2019.
2019, wow. We'll be back in the Australian Grand Prix, and we'll be seeing Sebastian Vettel again,
Yeah,
which is
very
great
true.
to see.
Great to see him back.
Yeah. So yeah, this has been the Afterburners. So oh my goodness,
There we had to happen at some
Oh my
stage. There we go.
it was gonna happen at
Moved
some
on.
stage.
We've moved on.
Odds on. This has been the F1Stop show, and yeah, just remember to tweet us on Twitter, F1Stop show, and also on our Instagram as well, F1Stop pod. And you can also email us as well if you've got any questions, comments. And yeah, I've been your host, Samuel Oni, and it's goodbye from me. Bye bye. And it's goodbye from Wes.
Bye bye.
And we hope you have a lovely week. And 2 weeks later, we'll be back for the Australian Grand Prix.